Hi everyone, this is Jay Johnson with dailytexture.com. Today we released a new stock photo package on Colorado from some images photographed in the Denver, Colorado Springs, Woodland Park, Colorado area many years ago. I've made a whole set of images using Topaz impression based on these Colorado stock photos. And I've had several people compliment the images and ask me how I'm doing those in impression. So I thought I'd do a quick little demonstration, at least I hope it'll be quick, that will show you how I work in Topaz impression. I'm working in Topaz impression 1. I have Topaz impression 2, but I had continued on in impression 1 and made some additional presets in there after I downloaded impression 2, but before I actually played with it. And therefore, since I already had it downloaded, those new presets that I made in impression 1 won't transfer over to impression 2. I would have to uninstall the software and reinstall the software in order for it to pick them up, and I just haven't bothered to do it yet. I'm happy with impression 1. I looked at impression 2. It didn't really have the upgrades and features that I wanted. It had some good upgrades, but I was specifically looking for being able to have several images open like this in a tab and do masking on each image. They did add masking to it, but it's only on the current layer, one layer. And I was also looking for the ability to apply different impression presets to one image or to one layer. Like for instance, apply a preset to say this layer right here, and then continue on and apply another preset to it. And unless I haven't found it yet in the program, that it doesn't have that ability yet. So I'm just still going through Photo FX Lab and working with impression 1. But today I wanted to show you this is one of the stock photos from a new stock photo pack that I just released, the Colorado package. Now let me tell you a little bit about these photos. These photos were taken quite some time ago, probably almost 10 years ago. They were taken with a different camera, nowhere near the sensors size that I have now. So therefore, they are smaller pictures. They're smaller images. They're like 2160 on the longest end. That's not up to par with the large size prints that I want to do. But because I'm using this as just a reference photo to do a painting from, then I can work with it. What I did with this photo before I brought it into Topaz Photo FX Lab is I sized the image up to 6,000 by 4,000 pixels, which is what I produce my images at now, because that way I can print a 60 to 40 inch print from these images. So this has already been resized up to 6,000 by 4,000, and I brought it into Photo FX Lab, which is where I always start my work. It's where I do the majority of my work. I use the masking tab here and my layers here. It's very important for me to have the different layers and the masking all together, and that's why I'm not into the impression 2, because they only let you have one layer of an image open and you can mask on that layer, which is helpful in some cases, but not in my case for the way I work. So I'm going to show you I'm starting this from scratch. I have not done this one. This is an image number 7, I believe, in the stock photo collection, and this is Pikes Peak, and this is taken right outside my dad's house. This is his backyard right here, and this is what you see from his backyard. And gosh, I wish I lived there, because I would love to see this every day. But we're going to get started here. The first thing I'm going to do, I have resized it up, so it does have noise. That's not going to matter, Normally I would denoise a photo first before I work on it. In this case, it's not going to matter because I'm going to use impression, which is going to turn it into a painting and apply brush strokes, and that will in turn get rid of any noise, which is another great use for impression. If you have a photo that is exceptionally noisy and you have made a preset or adjusted, you can adjust the presets in impression to be very, very subtle. And like the oil paint preset, I actually made my own version of that off of the one that came with the program, and I made it very subtle with a very small brush and a very subtle adjustment. And basically, the two oil paint presets that I made, basically they're so subtle. One adds extra color, but the other one, all it really does is remove excess noise and give it kind of a smooth look. So I'm not going to denoise this like I normally would because I'm going to take it into impression. If I was going to stay with the straight photograph, then yes, I would denoise it. In this case, I'm not going to, but I do want to bring out some details here and see how I can work with this. I'm going to go to Topaz Adjust on the photo layer, and let's try dynamic brightness. That gave it some really nice color and brought out some of these details here. Let's try dynamic pop. Now dynamic pop also brought out the details really nicely. Didn't give it the color, but I have a texture I'm going to use on this to give it some color, so I'm going to go with the dynamic pop, which just brings out the details. And as you can see, it made it more noisy, but that's okay because we're going to get rid of that with impression. I'm going to skip down here at the bottom and click OK. I don't think you can, the way my recorder's set up, I don't think you can see that button, but that's what I just did. Okay, now that adjusted the image, brought out some of the details here in the trees, brightened everything up quite a bit. This is the texture I'm going to use. Let's turn this on. This is from a new collection I'm working on. I have a couple new collections coming out in the next week or so. When I first started with the daily texture, one of my very first collections or single textures that I used, that I made quite a bit of, were the Old Masters textures. And then as soon as I got the new website and started making collections, I integrated those single textures into an Old Masters collection. But it only has 9 textures in it, and people have been asking me ever since then to do more of that type of style with the Old Masters tones, and I've been slowly but surely working on it. This is one from the new Old Masters collection that'll be coming out. The name of it is going to be Old Masters, New Masters. I was going to name it Old Masters 2, but I felt that with the brushwork I'm doing in these, this gives it a newer flair. And Old Masters are people that are gone. They're passed away. The work is very, very old. So basically what Old Masters, New Masters collection is doing is taking the color tones, using the color tones and the feel of the Old Masters style, but integrating some new, brighter colors, which tend to be more what we're creating these days, and some new brushwork that's a little bit more advanced. This is one from this new collection. Also number 7, which is ironic being that the stock photo I'm using is number 7 from that package. So this might be a lucky image. So this is the texture I'm going to use. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to use it. I'm going to go through some layer modes on top first and just scan down through and see if anything appeals to me that it does. I'm really looking to just change the color tones. Let's see. I liked multiply, but I didn't really like this fiery look in the sky. Let me try Yeah, let's try multiply and then duplicate that. There's a duplicate button here. And let's try soft light, which gives it a nice glow. I still don't like the fiery look in the sky. And it's a little too red down here. I'm just turn that off and put soft light on. Okay, I'm just trying to figure out where I want to go with this. Alright, I like what soft light does here. And I like what soft light does here and here. But I really want a little bit more drama in the sky. Let me see. I don't usually work with my textures with landscapes, so this is always a challenge for me. I'm on the multiply layer at the moment that I've set this on, and I'm going to mask away some of this orange right there. I don't like that in the sky. I do kind of like that drama in the top though, and I don't really like this as being so dark right here. So I'm going to mask this away. I'm just gently tapping. These adjustments I do with these are usually very subtle. I want a little bit more light on the mountain, so I'm going to mask it off. Mask some of this off the mountain right there. And I got it off the trees, which I wanted it on the trees. So I'm going to put some of that back on the trees right here. Whoops. I went over onto the mountain. I just wanted to warm up the trees a little bit. Keep the mountain a little brighter. Now I'm going to bring back some on the sky where I took it away. Like a little darker, little bit of golden light showing right there. But not too much. And then go over here. Darken this back up a little bit. Just give it a little drama without getting too much of the... I want a little glow in there, which is why I'm using this texture on this, because it's got this nice glow to it. But I don't want it to be too reddish, orangish. Okay, that's the multiply layer. That's before, and that's after. Now here's the soft light layer. Now that gives this a really nice glow, but once again we've got too much there. So we'll do the same thing here. I'm going to mask away some of this. It's a little bit too orangey right there. I'm going to mask away some of that. Not all of it, just some of it. Down here in this corner. I want to show that little white patch of snow right there. So now I've gotten too much off of the... I'm going to put some of this back on this brush right here. Now let's take some of this orangey out from right here. I like a little glow, but not a lot. Not the orange, more of a yellowish. Now, let me try something else. Let me desaturate that a little bit. If you saturate it like this, you raise your saturation, you can really see where your texture is. Now I'm going to leave the saturation where it was. So I have a multiply layer with some of that masked off. I have a soft light layer with some of that masked off. I'm going to mask away a little more of the soft light on the sky. I just want a little glow in there, but not too orangey. Put a little bit of it back. It doesn't matter if it looks blotchy or noisy or brush strokes are showing where they're not supposed to be, because that's all going to change when I use Topaz Impression. Right now I'm just after color tones in this work. Okay, So it warmed up the trees. It got a little bit too warm right there on this part and this part. That's coming from the texture where there's a little bit of orange there in that part of it. I want this to be lighter. Right there. Now, there's a button down here called From Stack. I'm going to try to lower this. There we go. Now you can see it probably. I'm going to merge all of this into one and compare it to the original image and see if this is where I want to go with this. I'm looking for a really colorful one for this one. I've done some neutral ones that aren't as colorful. I'm going to bring the original up here. So there's the original, and there's the new one. It looks a bit more dramatic, a bit more color in it. I may even pull down the saturation on that original, on that merged one just a little bit. And you can see here in the small image, this one has this nice glow in the sky. This one is more of a white sky. Yeah, I think I like that better with the saturation pulled down just a little bit. All right, I'm going to do another merge from stack because I did pull the saturation down. I want to work with a solid image, and when you merge from stack, that's what you get. Okay, now that I've done this, I have my color tones the way I like. I have the glow where I want it. Now it's time to go to impression. Now normally people would go to impression just directly on this layer, but I don't do that. I duplicate it like 3 times. So that's what I've just done. This one here was my merged image. Then these 3 are copies. So you can see it says copy, 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 and copy, copy, copy. I do this because I'm going to probably use different presets on different areas of the image. The grass, I want a preset of a painting style that actually looks like grass with long skinny brush strokes. The trees in through here in the middle, I want something a little bit more blocky. The same with the mountain. And then in the sky, I want something smoother. I want to smooth all this out. So I have 1, 2, 3. We're going to turn this one on, the first copy, and start with impression. I go to filter, Topaz slabs, and in Topaz impression. And I will choose a preset. I may get lucky and find one that works for the whole thing. But I doubt that. I usually do 3, at least 3. And I have all kinds set up over here. That's a real abstract. And I'm wanting a little abstract impressionistic kind of look. There's one called Clouds. And still the sky is a little bit choppy there. I don't like that. High color. High color. That gives it some definite boost of color. Here's a color pencil. Let's see. Dagus Forest is one of my favorites. It puts my Dagus Forest is, it puts just a slight little adjustment you can see before, after. And it has those long brush strokes. Actually work pretty good for the grass. That's a possibility. I also have one called Grass, which this one gives it a little smoother look for the grass. Just a little bit more smoothed out. I'm not really wanting smoothed out. I'm wanting a more heavy brush stroke, abstract, impressionistic kind of look. That's what I'm after. Let's see here. I'm just going to go through some more of these. Impressionist medium strokes, small strokes. I'm trying to not be so realistic. because I want it to look very painterly. And as I'm scanning through these, I'm looking at what they're doing to each one of these levels in case I find one that works. Let's see. Here's oil glaze. The two oil glaze presets I was telling you about if you wanted to get rid of noise. And these are they're custom presets that I made from the regular oil glaze one that came with the program, but I decreased the effect quite a bit. So it's very subtle, as you can see if I click on it here and blow it up. This is before, this is after. So it's very subtle, but it just takes out those little pieces of noise and it makes it look pretty smooth. And this one gives it some color when it does that. And then this one number 2 I created keeps the color the same, but just kind of smooths everything out. And if I was going for a very realistic oil painting type look for this, then I might use one of these two. Although I'd probably do a little bit more smoothing in the sky. Here's one, a simplification one, gives it a real watercolory look in certain areas. Here's another one, simplify, oil glaze winter. I like the brushwork in that. It was a little big, but I've used this one on some of the others, I think. Let's lower that brush size in that. Well, that's kind of nice. It kind of looks like Degas Forest, but it's got a little bit more punch to it. Let's see. I like what it's doing in the grass. Let's lower the brush size a little bit more. That's about down as far as it'll go. Well, that might be a possibility. It always kicks me out of my presets. Aggravating. I was on oil glaze winter. I've even got old masters over in here. There's a real blocky, sharp brushwork one. And a watercolory, smooth one. Pastel. Pastel always looks nice. I love pastel. Simplify. All kinds of simple, super heavy paint. Trees. Okay, now that looks good on the trees. I'm liking that on the trees. And there's some even extra speckles in the trees on that one. I like this one on the trees. I'm gonna, right now, I was looking at doing the ground first, but I'm liking this one on the trees. So I'm going to click OK on that so I can save that tree setting. So this will be the mid-ground. Now I still need to find something I like for the grass. So I'm going to the second copy, and I'm going back into impression. I might go back to that winter one. Let's see, oil glaze winter for the grass, but go with a smaller brush. Let's see, maybe a little smaller. Okay, I'm going to go with that for the grass and maybe the mountain. Now I need to do one for the sky. So I'm going to the third copy. This time I'm specifically looking for a preset that works well on the sky. So we're going to get back. I always go to my presets first. I have a preset that I know will work good on the sky that I created called Dreamy Distance. See, that just kind of smooths everything out, still keeps the colors the same. And then I have a Dreamy 2, which has a little bit more brushwork visible in it, but it has a little boost of color. So it's just a matter of which one I want to go with. If either one, I have another one. Impression soft. That's too much loss of detail. Here's one called Loose Detail I created. And I'm just clicking on this to go. I like this one. And I may still do something different with the sky. But let's try Loose Detail. Okay. So now the top layer, top copy, the number 3 copy is my sky. Second layer is the grass. First layer is the trees. All right. First layer is the trees. I actually like the trees in the second layer for the grass as well. Like the color boost there. What I'm going to do on this, I'm on second layer. This is the first layer right here that I created, which I had the preset that I liked for the trees. I'm going to turn on the second layer, which I had the preset for the grass, and I'm going to mask it all the way except for the grass. Which reveals what I had for the trees. Brings the sky back to whatever was in that first layer. Okay, so there's my grass. But I did like a little bit of that in those trees as well. So I'm going to lower my flow and go the opposite direction. And I'm just going to get in here and tap a little bit in these trees and bring some of this grass layer into the trees as well as what's already in the tree layer, if that makes any sense. In other words, I have 3 layers I'm combining here. These trees right here could stand a little bit of that being in there, but as you get back, you want them to be softer and more subtle. Okay, you can see by my little mask, I've got on that layer, the grass layer, I have masked away the sky and the mountain and most of the trees. And I've brought back a little bit, I've kept the grass part, and I've brought back a little bit of this layer into the trees. It brought some interesting brush strokes and some color right here, where I wanted to show that light was coming from right here. And I also put a little bit over here. So this is just the tree layer. The bottom one, that's just the tree preset I chose for the trees. Then on the grass one, this is what I chose for the grass. And you can adjust your opacity too if you want to, which I may do here. And adjust that grass, because this way it's a little bit too strong in color. And if I bring it down a little, it will actually combine effects from both layers, the new grass layer and the old grass layer from where I had the trees, where I was working on the trees, but it also gave some interesting speckles here. And then I put this one on top. Now we're going to work on, and I like the mountain as is. The mountain came from the tree layer. The mountain and the trees look pretty good with that. Now, let's go to the sky layer. The sky layer, I'm going to obviously keep the sky, but mask away all of this. So we're going to do a full strength mask to reveal everything on the bottom. I'll cut into the sky just a little bit, just to show some light and brushwork. There. See, this is the sky. It's nice and soft. This was before, and this is after. It's really smoothed out. Brought back a little of the sky brushwork here. And I'm going to take a little bit of that away just to soften that right there, where it looks a little strong to me, behind this tree and right here. Just a little bit. Now, I always turn them all off. This is my original. Now we're starting to do the painting with using the different layers and the different presets for the different areas. I think the sky needs to be pumped up a little bit in saturation to match the other saturation. So I'm going to bring that up just a little. Maybe down a little bit more. It doesn't need to be too oversaturated. That's pretty nice right there. I like the way this is looking. So at this point, I'm going to click from stack to merge all of that I just did together. Okay, there's a merged copy of everything. I'm going to duplicate that because I want to play with it some more. I don't want to mess up what I just did, so I can always go back to it. So I have a lot of layers here now. I'm going to take this back into Impression again and just scan through those presets to see if anything does anything interesting that I must have. It's still a little too realistic looking for me because I'm really looking for a more painterly approach, I guess you would say. So now I'm doing impression on the impression copy that I just finished. And I'm thinking here. Here's Vegas. I like this one. That takes away some of my light, though. I'm not sure if I like that. I'm just clicking on the different ones. Scanning down through my list. Impression thick. Ooh, that's pretty thick. Impressionist 2. That one's pretty dark. Sorry if I go quiet. I'm thinking. There's that winter one again. I know I use that in some of the others. And there's this one again. You can always reduce the opacity on these as well to see if you like anything. And you can, of course, reduce brush sizes. That's kind of interesting. It's a little bit harsh. I don't know where that's coming from. The lightness needs to be brought up. The contrast needs to be brought down. Gives it some interesting brushwork there. Not in the sky. Not sure about it. So I'll go back and continue to play. Let's see. Honestly, I can't remember what I did. I'm looking at some notes here to see if I happen to have made notes. And there's Turner. Now, I like Turner. Turner is kind of interesting. Gives it more of that abstract look there. A little oversaturated. Let's see if I can bring that down. Bring the brightness up. Change these numbers all to 0 and see what it looks like. It's kind of nice. It loses a little bit of the darkness there. I really like the feel it's given it there. I wonder if I reduce the brush size a little bit more, if that will. Ooh, I kind of like that. Needs a little bit more contrast. I don't know if adjusting that here will. Kind of like that. A little bit too pinky right there. Bring that saturation down just a little bit. I'm going to go back and bring that brush size back up some. Loosen this thing up a little bit. I like that on everything except the sky. I'm going to click. I think I'm going to check all my settings here. Yeah, I'm going to click OK. Now it's starting to look a little bit more painterly. I think I'm going to, working on that same layer that I just did that on, I'm going to go back to impression to, nope, I'm going to duplicate that layer and go back to impression for the sky and see what I can come up with for the sky. I don't want to go too dreamy because I think it would look odd with the heavy brushwork down here. Needs some brushwork in the sky. Let's go to Turner. Let's see. I had something. Turner Large. Let's try Turner Large and try changing the brush rotation of the strokes in the sky and raising the brush size up. And now still looks a little strong. Bring it down. That's kind of interesting. It's a little bit too saturated. Bring that saturation down to 0. Gives it a little brushwork in the sky, but not too much. Okay, I'm thinking. Change this back to 0. It's kind of interesting. I'm going to click OK. I may not use it. So that's with the Turner adjustments. This is the sky adjustments. Well, there's only one way to know if it'll work or not, and that's to to mask away everything except the sky and see how it looks. A quick way I do this is click invert. That masks away everything, and then I'll bring back the sky layer by going the opposite way up here like this. Like so. It's got a little bit too much color in it. That's easy to fix. Bring down the saturation a little. Could even bring up the exposure a little. Play with it. Let me turn this off, this off, this off. Just going back to the original one I first did to see whether I like that sky better. Well, I kind of do. Tell you what, I'm going to get rid of the sky on this layer. Like so. Just get rid of all that choppy brushwork in the sky. I like the brushwork everywhere else, just not in the sky. There we go. Now here's the last layer I did, which darkened things a little, which had the Turner brush strokes in it, and I'm not going to use it at full strength because it darkened it too much. I'm going to put it in the middle, or maybe about, let's try, that's before, that's after. I like what it's doing right here, and I'll look at this, I'll look at sections when I'm working with this and see what I like. A little too pink right here, so we're going to get rid of that. right here. I'm just going to tap right on up through here. Need an area for light to come down onto that mountain. So right through here. Now let's bring the opacity to about 30. We're getting somewhere. Not sure about this sky layer. Don't like it. It's too dark. I'm going to delete the sky layer I just did. So now we're back to the Turner layer that I did the Turner adjustments on, which gave it some strong, choppy brush strokes in here and in the mountain, and gave it some nice color. I like that. I may leave the sky as it is, because I do like the tones. I like the shape of these little clouds through here that came from the texture. And that's another thing I can do, is I can duplicate the texture. Let me reset the mask on that. Pull that up to the top. Okay, now that's set on soft light. That would be normal. Overlay soft light. That gives me a little bit more of those brush strokes showing from the texture. But I don't like how it's really oversaturating everything and putting too much color on the bottom. So I got a couple different things I can do as I play with this. I always like soft light. It's one of my very favorites. I do like that color it's added. But it's too much color down on the bottom. Let me reduce the saturation and just see what the texture does before, after. Well, now that's interesting. It puts some nice light right here where it's just something I wanted to focus on, that little piece of snow. It darkened this too much, which I can take care of with the mask. It brightened up this and this. One thing I could try doing is resizing the texture layer. Bring it up, move it around, get some of those brush strokes in there. And then maybe bring the opacity of it down. So that gives some of those brush strokes to the sky that are actually coming from the texture. I don't want it to be too strong, but a little adjustment, and I tend to stick around 30% for some very small adjustments. Okay, that's before, and that's after. It just gives it a little bit of a boost, maybe even a little stronger. 50. I like the 50%, and this is the texture layer totally desaturated. So basically I'm just using the light and the actual brushwork texture from the texture when I desaturate it. I'm not using the color. I could boost the color back up if I wanted to, but then you start getting with things getting too orange and yellow. And I just wanted a little bit of that. And I had the color tones like I liked already. I'm going to click from stack, which merges everything again. I can't believe I've been talking for 43 minutes. See, the way I do these impression paintings are not fast. I don't just click a button and I'm done. As you can tell, I work on lots of different layers and look at different areas. I'm pretty happy with the way this looks. I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to play with clarity, which helps to pump up the detail, brushwork, adds a little bit boost of light. Get out of there. Come on, shush. This won't close out. There we go. Okay, that's before the clarity adjustment. This is after. Look at this tree right here. Before, after. You can see how it just gave a little bit more division in the tree. Brightened everything up right through here. Gave more clarity to the mountain. Also gave more clarity to the sky, which I don't particularly like because it darkened this, but I can always mask it away. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to click OK and accept this. And this is Fur and Feathers Clarity. It's just what I always use. They have a number of different ones you can choose for different things. I just tend to stick with Fur and Feathers. Okay, so that's before, that's after. I like everything it did except for what it did to the sky. So on the clarity layer, I'm going to mask away what it did to the sky, which will soften that back up. Get right down here, top of this tree, and down alongside the mountain, and the top of that tree line. And click on and off again to see if I like what I've done. I like that. It's still not as abstract as some of the other ones. And I'm not sure if I want to try to go more abstract or if I'm going to leave it alone. Got a little spot here I missed with my mask. A little spot right here. Okay, let's click from stack again. I like it now that I'm sitting here waiting on it to process and I'm looking at it. I like it. The only thing it could have in it that I didn't put in there is an eagle, but that's the nice thing about these backgrounds is it's a full painting by itself, but later if I decide I want to, I can always integrate an animal in here like a deer or a bear. I could always add an eagle into the scene and use this as a background for something else. I like this the way it looks. Now, I'm going to go back to, I'm going to click OK and accept this. I'm not going to do any further adjustments to this at this point. So I'm going to click OK, which will take me back to Paint Shop Pro, which is my host program. It's a lot of layers, so it's taking a while to process. All right, I'm going to click Undo. That's the photo I started with that I had resized to the right size I needed. And now if I click Redo, that's what it ended up looking like. So there's the before photo straight from the camera many, many, many years ago. And this is what it looks like now as a painting. And I always like to roll out with my mouse and look at it from a distance. So that's before. The mountain is kind of disappears back into that sky in this one. Before one. Now the mountain becomes a nice accent to everything else, with the little white showing right there pretty strongly. That little spot of snow right here that I wanted to focus on right there stands out more. So I'm happy with this. I'm going to call this a painting and say that I'm finished with Pikes Peak in Colorado. I hope that gave you some idea of how I work with Topaz Impression. It's not just click a button and use a preset. It's adjusting those presets. And every time I land on something I like when I make an adjustment of a preset, I save it as a new preset with my name in front of it. And that way I know that's one I created. And I try to name it kind of along the line of what it does. Like the dreamy one makes everything dreamy looking. The trees one I used on these trees, it worked well on trees. That's why I named it trees. Same with grass and things like that. Then it's a matter of getting the image set up right, getting it to be the right size, using textures if you want to blend with the image or your subject, and merging all of that, and therefore you have your starting image to work with. Then duplicating that starting image in several copies so you can go at Topaz Impression with different areas. See, one thing that with Impression, it's an automatic painting program, and it's very, very good, but it doesn't necessarily always think. It can't think like the eye can think and like the human can think. When you paint something like this, what's in your foreground is going to have, wherever you're going to focus on, whether it be in your foreground or up here or back here, something is going to have to be sharper and have more detail. And the other things are going to become more faded as the eye moves away from them. You want the eye to go to the area where you want the viewer to look. You want to put the most detail there is what I'm trying to say. And Topaz Impression doesn't know where you want to put that detail. If they had a button to click and say, put most of my detailed brush strokes here, then that would be great, because then you could tell it. And then, fade out your other brush strokes as they move away from that. And they may do that in the future. It may get to that. But that's why I create the different layers. Like the detail that's down here in this grass and in these trees, I don't want that detail appearing in the sky. That doesn't make sense. The sky's not necessarily going to have that detail. I could have used the same type of brush strokes as I did here and just made them bigger for the sky. But unless it's very, very abstract and impressionistic, I don't like my sky to have those really thick, heavy brush strokes in them. I like my skies to be a little softer. But you'll notice this is very soft, and as you get down to the mountain, it's a little sharper because I wanted to draw the eye there. But then these trees in the background are softer than, say, these trees and these trees. And then this grass area right here is sharper than the trees, because this is the way the eye is going to follow. You want the eye to land right there. You draw them in right here. And then as they move through, things get softer. But then they get here and they get caught up in that mountain, because that's the ooh and the ah part of that scene, is that mountain. So you want to lead them in and get them there and then make them stop. And then they can relax as they move on into the sky with their viewpoint. And you don't have to, but I tend to think like that when I'm thinking of doing a painting and impression. And so I'll create different layers with different presets to get me there to that point. I know where I want the eye to land and go, and I know those need to be the sharpest areas. I know what kind of look I'm after, if I want lots of brushwork, if I want really abstract, or if I want halfway realistic, which this is kind of a cross between the two. It's got some pretty strong brushwork down through here, but it's still very realistic looking. It's not as abstract as I could have gone, but this is the way this one spoke to me, and this is what I wanted to portray. Got a little brushwork appearing here, and here's from the texture. I'll blow this up from that, and this is up 200% here, but you can see the detail that came from adding that texture afterwards. So there is some detail from the texture in there where I added that, but that didn't really have the color added at that point, just to get the lighting and the details. And that's that new texture that's coming out in the Old Masters, New Masters collection. That'll be coming out, it'll be out by the 1st of August. So you can look forward to that in the month of August. And there'll be several of the Old Masters, New Masters collections. The first collection is going to have 20 in it. There'll be some that are suitable for using with images like this. There'll be some for using with your animals and your wildlife. There'll be some that are more portrait oriented, if you want a nice background for a portrait. Just a good mix of everything with the Old Masters feel to it, but that new, just a new flair to it that we can give it nowadays. Anyway, I hope that you have found this useful, and that it might have explained how I work in impression. It's not a one-step click a button kind of thing. It's a several layer process to make it look the way it needs to look to be a completed painting in whatever method you choose to go. It's the way a painter thinks about using impression, at least in my case. That's the way I think about it. Anyway, I hope you guys have a great weekend. I hope you enjoy the new stock photo packages, the Colorado one and the Shiloh Wildlife one, which I neglected to mention. If I'd have grabbed one of the fawns or the uh, owl or deer or something from that I could have put in here, then I would have remembered it, but I didn't. I wanted this to be a plain landscape I could use later for another background on something else or just publish alone. But so we have the Colorado collection of stock photos and the Shiloh Wildlife collection of stock photos that you can use to create your own art from, or you can merge the two things together with your other subjects that you've photographed. There's just all kinds of ways that you can use them. This is just one way I'm using them right now, but I'm going to assure you this is not going to be the end, because this will probably become a background for another subject of mine later, as will several of the other Colorado images. I just felt like doing a landscape collection of just scenery, and this was, the 20th or so one I've done, and in impression, and they're working out very well. Anyway, I hope you all have a great weekend. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.